have a good Halloween.
Fine.
Trick or treaters out there. So,
Safe.
do we have any public participation out here in the audience tonight? Mr. Rule.
I notice on new business item 2, there's to consider establishing a stipend. And I'm just wondering if this is for the town election for the next budget, because I don't see it referenced in the current budget. Or maybe I missed it.
I don't follow you.
As far as funding,
The funding for what, number 2?
item 2, and also item 3.
They're both in the budget. They were both in the budget from last year.
Can you point to the line? I'm puzzled because I don't remember. I thought I read the budget.
The current budget that was approved on October 4th, it would be page 5 under school board system administration. You can see a figure for the proposed budget year 18-19 of $27.50, and I believe that would include 4 board members at $500 per is $2,000 and $750 for the chair to account for the $27.50 that appears under that line on page 5.
I'm looking on page 4, I'm sorry. I don't see it on page 4.
You're right at the very top.
Okay, I'm sorry, I do see it. Thank you.
The next one, number 3 under new business, that is represented on page 2. There's $3,500 on the line for technology repairs and maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other public participation? One in Bathurst.
I just wanted to let the board know that we created a committee. We're going to have an ad hoc committee.
Who's we?
We include at this time, it's going to be Juan Matthews, Stephanie
No,
Tesla.
who we, it says created a committee.
Oh, well, what we did is, well, basically, I think I created it. We had to go through a process. We had to get a petition signed of at least 10% of the last voters, which was 770 votes, I believe. And so we got that approved Wednesday night up here at the town meeting. And so we are going to research withdrawal from the AOS and reorganization perhaps of the SAD 19, and it's just, collecting data. And there'll be 5 original committee members right now, and the selectmen have requested that we bring 2 more on and have an alternate. And so anyway, right now that's where we're at. We've got to advertise for 2 more members.
What was the group called, Wanda?
It's called, well, it's an ad hoc committee, and it's the Lubec feasibility. I can't remember exactly how we stated that, Ari. I apologize for that. And, but anyway, I think next week we'll have our first meeting, and then Renee's going to advertise for any 2 interested people. And I think I'd made Mr. Johnson aware of this earlier, that, we would be doing this.
This is an ad hoc committee like the high school
High school
reopening?
committee,
Okay.
yes. And I also had a question too about, for Mr. Johnson, a quick one. On the reading program that we purchased, when did they actually pay for that, Mr. Johnson?
That did not actually get paid for. It appears on a warrant. I think it was the first one in September after the budget was approved. But you may have heard that we were able to get an advance copy from the distributor. So we had sample materials that the salesperson let us have in advance. And if that did not survive the budget process, we simply would have returned the materials at no risk to us. But that is a fairly common practice among curriculum vendors. They'll let you have an advanced copy. It's a sales tool because from their perspective, they feel that once you have it and get using it and like it, it will increase the chances of actually purchasing it. But we did not commit the money until after the budget was approved.
Now, did we purchase this or are we leasing it?
No, we purchased it.
Purchased that? And right here, I got a copy, which you said I could get,
Yeah.
of the budget. And in parentheses, it said, it looks like we're $2,100 over that budget.
Yeah. And if you have the expenditure from the previous year, that would be on that budget line. The budget the overall budget is well in the black, and I expect to be reporting on your audit shortly after the new year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public participation?
Just had a question on grades 6 through 8. Do we know how many students are tuitioned out in these grades? And is there any sort of format that when you ask for your child to be tuitioned out to another school, that a parent or guardian could go by so they know the specifics to write in there? And you're not wasting each party's time, kind of like a racquetball back and forth. I mean, if you're looking tuition your child out to another school and then, you're asked to write an email for that requirement and for the transfer, I was just wondering if the school board would maybe think about having a form that a parent or guardian could follow so they would know the specifics that maybe the school board or whoever makes that decision, Mr. Johnson in my case, could follow and they're not lost, because most of the time it would be the first time, I would think.
The only form for, say, an elementary student, and the same would be true whether it's pre-K to 8, is a superintendent's agreement form. We use the default form, the state model. We adopted that form, so when I receive a request from a parent, many times I'll get a verbal request over the phone or an email. My office sends out the form, and it just has a very generic appearance, name, address, but you must, any parent must state a reason why they would like their child to attend elsewhere. It's called the superintendent's agreement, and the board does not approve those. No board does. That's why they're called superintendent's agreements, but the burden is on the parent to explain a strong educational rationale as to why they would like their child to attend outside of the district. And there is somebody in the Department of Education, her name's Pam Ford Taylor, who reviews my response and all the other superintendent responses on behalf of the commissioner. And they can call and ask for more information. That's happened around the district. I've talked to Pam a few times this year. Ultimately, it is the commissioner can override my decision. And in a recent change in the law in the last couple of years, the commissioner's decision is no longer final. His decision can be appealed to the State Board of Education, and their decision is considered final. But that is the process. It begins with the superintendent. Parent makes a request, and both superintendents would have to agree, but it's not something that the board would get involved with.
Is that something a board could get involved in eventually if it was agreed upon by whomever? I just don't know who. But when I talked to Pamela Ford Taylor also, she said they had no jurisdiction here because of the ALS. So I felt I was at a dead end. It was a brick wall. She said because of legislative laws, being in an ALS, once I told her, she said, oh, we're out, we can't do anything about it. So I had no place to go.
Well, I believe the process would be the same in an RSU as well, but I've never worked in an RSU. I wouldn't know that 100% for sure, but I've entered into superintendent's agreements with other RSUs, and it seems to function the same way.
I just don't understand where, you refer us to, you can go to the Department of Education for an appeal, but then the Department of Education is kind of like a ping pong ball. You're told, well, you guys are in an ALS, so we have no jurisdiction there, there's nothing we can do, it had its superintendent's approval, so we're stuck. And then when you guys say no, there's that brick wall, and then the Department of Education at the state level can't do anything. Their hands are tied, the board's hands are tied, and it's ultimately up to you in the ALS. And that doesn't leave us with much else to decide.
I can tell you with 100% certainty that my word is not final. I have had written decisions overturned by previous commissioners.
That's not what I was reading about the Department of Education. I talked to the same lady you did, Pamela Ford Taylor, and she ultimately told me, we have no jurisdiction in Lubec because you're run by an AOS, and ultimately the state cannot even step in, and that, I don't believe, should be the case. I don't think it's very
Well,
fair.
I can look into that to make sure that my understanding is what the state's understanding, but if I had to speculate a little, Mrs. Gates, under previous commissioners, they were much more willing to overrule the superintendent's decision, and it became quite a political thing. The superintendents as a group lobbied previous commissioners very hard to say, let the decision rest with us, because what happens when the superintendent's agreement is approved, the town of residence loses subsidy. So every student that is allowed to leave a town that has a school by superintendent's agreement, that town loses subsidy for that child. And all around the district, we have small schools. I don't have big schools in any of them. So I've got other boards that have pretty much heavily implied to me, be judicious in how you approve those. Now, the rationale that is examined, if I say yes or no, the rationale that's examined by the commissioner is what's in the best interest of the child. And I've approved some cases because parents have an overwhelming rationale, and I've denied some cases where I didn't think the rationale was strong enough to justify a loss in subsidy. And so there is another layer beyond the superintendent. But in essence, it acts as a loss in subsidy, but the provision exists so superintendents can get together and act based on what they collectively feel is in the best interest of the child. And I actually had a case hit my desk this morning that I will probably approve in another town, but just to let all of you know how that one's gonna work, I emailed the chair of that town and the vice chair and asked them both to call me. And we're gonna have a conversation about that to make sure the board can support my decision, because it is gonna represent a loss of subsidy in that particular town, and they have fewer students than you. So even though to me, that particular case, and I'm just using this as an example, that particular case to me is one that I would approve, I am sensitive to my board's concern in that town, because they have told me, be judicious in how you approve those, because every child that I approve is a loss in subsidy. So I apologize if somebody in the Department of Education has given you some different information, but I can verify that to make sure my understanding is what the department's understanding is. But
Well, I would just like to know for further, people who come across what I've come across, and unfortunately, as you know, I went further
right,
and pulled him out totally, and he goes to a state-funded charter school now, and
Yep.
which is working out really well, I do have to say, and, it was just a path we needed to follow at that point in time, but I just felt where there are other children that are in the same scenario as my son, I do feel it to be very biased, and that is what causes a lot of conflict, and that I don't think is right. And I will always say that.
I mean, I can understand why you might feel biased, but the level of, the burden of proof, if you will, or the standard that superintendents use to judge these, and they're all on an individual case-by-case basis. It's what superintendents feel is in the best interest of the child, and we can be overturned by the commissioner. But I can verify that, and that's just how those go.
I just had a brick wall, and it was ultimately you and Mr. Porter, and of course I know what your decisions were, and there was no, and that's why I took that other path. But I wish we could have ultimately come to some type of an agreement for my son, because if anyone knows my son better than anyone, it would be me in the best, knowing his best interest, not a superintendent, where you don't really know my child as far as I'm concerned. I feel the parent should have a lot of say in that. And when you talk to the Department of Education in your state, and they're telling you, we have no jurisdiction, sorry, you have to go back to the superintendent and the AOS, where do you go? When you keep hitting this brick wall, and ultimately that's why a lot of times we form committees like this to look into getting out of the AOS, but if we could all work together, as Mrs. Streeter mentioned, which we have all mentioned in the beginning, when all this started, and I had about the communication here. It's just cut and dry and undercut, and it needs to stop. Everybody needs to be open. We need to be transparent, as Stephanie has said a lot of times, and it's not. It's a lot of undercut. It's not good, and it hurts our kids ultimately. and they are our future community members, and they watch all of us. They watch all of us adults and how we act towards each other, and that's not good.
Yep.
Not for my son, anyway. You know, just hopefully you can form up a form or something if someone else goes that path, that maybe talk to the Department of State of Education. You know, you can't have a brick wall when you're, you know, parents.
We're still an SAD here. We're still
Right.
have our own independent school board that actually governs what goes on in the school. You know, somewhat separate from the AOS. We have services from the AOS, so I don't see why there's a difference, so.
I don't know what
You know, I
the
might
answers
have
are.
a peek at this. And
Right, we
see
keep
if I can-
looking, but
see
we
what I
don't get
can
the answers, Mike, and that's what we're looking for, you know?
Just a real quick, I talked to, this weekend, I saw Fred Pierce and Jim Blake, and I talked to both of them about your website for the school, and they'd both be interested in trying to help with that some. Gene is the IT, you know, he's the coordinator, at the medical center, and then Fred Pierce is, you know, works with it. So they both, showed us
Maybe,
interest.
I believe, we've kind of directed where that's gonna go to the technology people at the school, so if they have questions or something like that, they can call on, that'd be great. Yeah. So, thank you. Okay, to consider the approval of the following school committee minutes as written with corrections or as recommended by the superintendent of schools. We actually have two. We have October 18th, which was a full school board meeting, so. And do I have a motion on the 18th of October?
I'll move.
Okay, and a second on that?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and for Monday, October 22nd, that was the meeting with Steve Bailey and the Maine School Board Association. No motion on that.
I'll move.
And a second? Have a second on that motion?
I guess I'll second it, just so we can have a conversation.
Excuse me?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
Well, I just feel like some of these minutes often are remarkably unuseful. And this one really struck me. Mr. Bailey spoke about policies and distributed BBA, BBD, BCA, and BEDH. Policy KE is needed. So I was there, and I know basically what those are, but anybody else, or in another year, that's not gonna be a valuable document, and we
Well, they
keep
can
these.
actually be referred back to what they are from the document here. They're not part of the minutes, but they were referred to in the minutes, so if I call up and I ask Helen Kilby over there, can I have a copy of BDD and a copy of BCA, and she can go right into the computer and produce that copy. So, I mean, we know what they are, and that's what we're approving the minutes, that this is what we met on. And it's not really, if the public wants to review the minutes, they're more than welcome to do that. And if they have questions about that, they can refer back either to the superintendent or the secretary or the chair board or the vice chair and get that information, so.
Yeah, and all it would take would be to, you know, in 3 words, state what each one of them is, so then they don't have to make 3 phone calls to know what they're reading. It just seems like it's a silly little thing, but, I read
To
it.
refer to these policies in 2 or 3 words would probably be very difficult. But the policy heading, BDD, BCA, BEDH, okay, those can be actually categorized in the computer system that we have available at the AOS and pull those right up.
well, all I'm suggesting is like this community use of school facilities is KF. So if it's, the minutes said KF, it had parentheses, community use of school facilities policy.
Some of them are much longer than that. I understand what you're saying, but we can actually, by making a phone call, pull these up on the computer and have them complete with the full title of them, right there, so. Any other discussion? All in favor? All opposed? 4 to 1. Okay. Do we have a principal's report tonight? Okay. Hmm?
3 to 1.
3 to 1, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. Do we have the principal's report?
I have one request from Tina that she's relayed to me this afternoon. She's asking for clarification around the disposal of elementary textbooks. At our last meeting, this board voted to have a dumpster on site for disposal of high school textbooks, and we had some volunteers from the community who would come in and rip the covers off and recycle the paper pages. There are some older, outdated textbooks at the elementary level, and Tina's question is whether or not this board would approve disposal in the same manner when the dumpster is on site.
Well, I'm gonna touch upon that when I have my little report here, so.
Okay.
And then we can bring that in and maybe put that on the next agenda.
Okay.
Is there an update from either you or from Tina about the website?
I have additional information if it pleases the board.
I guess we'll get there when we get to that in the meeting. Okay, anything else from the principal?
No.
Eddie? Okay, anyone from the school board have anything? Well, I do. Actually went down to Augusta last week and went to the Maine School Management Conference down there, Maine School Board Association Conference and so on. And I was kind of enlightened by some things down there. Might be not the right word. I was kind of shocked on how much the legal companies that the schools deal with are involved in making law in the state of Maine. And they're up to their neck in it. So, one of the things that, a couple of the little conferences I attended, one was an update on school reorganization with a thing called regional service centers and withdrawals. So, and I was surprised to find that one of the presenters, who was actually with a law firm in the state of Maine, pretty much off of the whole thing. So it's like, okay. And so I was kind of surprised to find out how much a private legal firm that schools contract with throughout the state of Maine. It's not only one, there's several of them that are actually writing these laws that the legislature is enacting. It's kind of weird. But
How can you get any information about that money? How could a citizen get information about that?
You can get information by going on the Maine Department of Education website and actually seeing those little things that, are turned into legislation and law and so on like that. So, but it was quite enlightening, quite eye-opening how much that these private firms are involved in this. And I don't know how long it's been going on, because it's only my first meeting I've been to, so.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that characteristic has been going on for many years, because when legislation is proposed, the legislators, some of them have extensive training, and some of them are just well-meaning people who want to be involved, and they represent their communities very well to the best of their ability. But when it comes down to turning legislation into actual law, they do indeed rely heavily on Drummond and Woodson, who also represents us.
Yep.
D&W represents 85% of the school districts in the state, and I did not attend that particular conference. I attended some other ones that were put on by Drummond and Woodson representatives, but it would not surprise me in the least if Dick Spencer was there in person, because he specializes in blending school and municipal law. The lawyers that our firm employs, our legal team represents there, probably 40 or 50 of them in the firm, and each one has an area of specialty. And, some of them do indeed specialize in that type of law, whether it's municipality law or blending schools and municipal law together. And, he's widely considered the guru, and I'm sure he was one of the primary authors.
Yep, it was quite eye-opening, so. Did meet with some vendors down there on, some other things that, actually, I'm gonna bring this up to the board probably in the next few meetings, having some people come in and look at different things that we have in the high school, not in the high school, in the school itself, the building, primarily the lighting systems, and, there's some types of early warning systems and so on like that for, assistance that's needed and so on like that. So, I'm gonna gather some information, bring it to the board in the next couple of weeks, and actually, see if we can invite some of these people in, maybe to look at maybe saving some money. A lot of this stuff, there are grants out for it, there are rebates out there for it, and, just for instance, with LED lighting and so on like that, I believe these are LED lights in here, and you can save quite a bit of money considering how many fluorescent lights we have in that building. So, I'm gonna be gathering some information on that, and bringing it to the board in the next couple of meetings, so. I went over to the, LCOC building today, and apparently the gentleman who was gonna pick up the desks and so on like that, and I believe the director's room over there, they're still there, so I have to contact him to find out what's going on with that. I haven't found out whether they've had enough covers ripped off books yet there, someone has volunteered to do that. But as it is right now, I don't think I can get a dumpster for a few weeks, so that's why it's kind of probably a good idea to see if we can put that school books, the, elementary school books on the agenda for next week, and when we can arrange for a dumpster, we can get that all done, hopefully in one shot. Mr. Rowley.
In light of the ongoing discussion regarding students and screen time, and I understand what we're looking at with purchase of reading material that will be, I presume, updated regularly. I'd like to know the school books, the textbooks that Ms. Warmel is proposing to be disposed of. Could we get a reading on what the initial purchase price was of the books that are being discarded? In other words, what did the taxpayers pay to provide these books that are now being replaced by on-screen versions? Is there some way to get back to that number?
Maybe. I say maybe simply because theoretically, we can go back a few years electronically through past records to see what was spent from the curriculum line, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should have a few years to go back, but Tina told me word of mouth that some of the ones she's looking to dispose are of 2000 vintage, 2001, 2005. I don't know if we go back that far, but,
Twice as old as any of the students.
yeah, but I can look around.
Or perhaps you can give an estimate of what it would cost to replace those with textbooks,
Yep.
not on screen.
Well, one of the vendors that Mike may have seen down there, specializes in that sort of thing. That technology is out there. You can get online textbooks. The difficulty is age appropriate for the child. Younger children, it's easier for them to manipulate a physical book in their hand rather than, the screen or the keypad. And there's some debate about what you're testing when you do online testing. Are you testing what the kid knows or their ability to manipulate the keypad or whatever? But there has been research to that effect. That ability is out there with online textbooks, and we could probably do an estimate about what could potentially be saved or what has potentially been spent. But I'll have to dig into that, John.
I'd just like to see what the cost difference is. Thank you.
It's not my place, but can I just make a comment on the new reading program?
Absolutely, please.
I have plenty of books. The one as a first and second grade teacher, John, I will tell you that I am against the technology textbooks. And my reading program that I received, and I know pre-K, K's had them on first, second, and three, but we got a hefty amount of books with our new reading program, and
the technology piece is only one component of it, but the students got textbooks, so I just want to make that clarifying comment that in the new reading program, thank goodness, we do have real, yes, and, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Johnson, you have a superintendent's report?
Just a couple of quick items this evening. As Mike indicated, MSMA Fall Conference is on the 25th and 26th. Variety of presentations there. New laws rolling out. Follow up with laws that have been with us for a few years. But it's always good to go down and see my colleagues from around the state and talk about some of their challenges. And it's an event that I look forward to every year. A couple other items that I'll mention. I received an inquiry this afternoon about what we intend to do with our old buses. And we have somebody locally who might be interested in that.
Well, that depends on what's happening with grants.
That's correct. So I told him that ultimately this board will have to vote as to what you would like to do with the old buses. Other boards have put them out to bid, for example, and that's a possibility for us as well. But Mike is correct. It depends greatly on the status of our grant applications, and I can speak to that a little bit more. But I did tell this gentleman that the board would have to vote to put anything out to bid, and if that were to happen, all he would have to do was simply to keep an eye on the clay cards, and I'm sure they'd be all over. Speaking of buses, our award letters are currently in the mail, but if you frequent the Maine Department of Transportation site, you can indeed see online the results of our application. And we are indeed listed there, and because we are indeed in the money. What makes me a little concerned is how they listed it, because it says AOS 77 Eastport Lubec School Department. And I submitted two separate applications because Eastport and Lubec are very much two independent, completely separate legal entities. The way that it reads online makes me wonder whether they thought it was one thing. And if that's the case, I need to pick up the phone and call them.
Is that the Volkswagen grant?
Right, right. But we are listed there, and it would appear online that we're in the money.
Okay.
So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I just don't dare get super excited right now until I get the award letter into my hand and see in black and white how it is written up. And they should respond to each school department independently, so I should get two of them. But again, and maybe it's just me, the way that I'm looking at it, but it reads a little confusing to me online, but I will certainly pass that along.
So on that grant award application, were we down for 2 buses?
Lubec was down for 2, and Eastport was down for 1.
Okay. I need to speak a little bit more on the grant application. If we award, we get an award of that grant, okay? One of the stipulations in that grant is that the buses that are being replaced will have to be made non-functional, which means there will have to be a hole put in the block of the motor, and at a specific site in the front of the bus, the frame will have to be cut. So virtually, the bus will be inoperable, except for parts. So, going on what Mr. Johnson said, there's probably someone who wants to bust it and roll down the road and make a camper or something out of it, more than likely. So it will actually probably
Have to be towed.
pardon me?
Have to be towed down the road.
It would have to be towed down the road, and I can't say that it's gonna probably affect the price that we can get for a bus greatly, because even a bus that will roll down the road in that condition, it's not gonna be a lot of money. But it now becomes, instead of rolling stock, it becomes towing stock. So that's one of the things I want to make the board aware of. We have to destroy the buses so it doesn't function. So a couple of years ago, they had what, cash for clunkers, over 15 or 20 years ago, and in the cars and the motor vehicles, and they had to put some goop in the engine to solidify it. It was like glass or something that they had to pour in the engine to make it non-functioning, and then cut the frame. So
Like, what did you say was the price, the cost to the town? Excuse me, if, with the grant, what's the cost to the town?
I don't think we mentioned that.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
there is a percentage that they'll give us in
We
lieu of what we buy, so,
we had to put in a 20% match.
yeah. So, let's say a bus costs $90,000, we would pay 20% of that,
Mhm.
okay? And again, these buses, with the exception is, there's a few out there, but those will probably be scooped up right away. We're probably looking at like 75 to 90 days from order to delivery on anything we order. So, we won't see a brand new bus here until spring. So,
Last item in my report this evening, I'd like to appoint Rebecca Lord, Pee Wee girls basketball coach.
all right.
And that's all that I had in my report.
Can we give a shout out for our soccer team?
I was
League
I was
champs?
just about to do that, so, outstanding job. The coaches and team and the boosters and everyone. And the bus drivers and Anna arranging for those rides and the parents arranging for the rides was outstanding, so.
Good job, Anna.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happened to be
No,
away
thank
when that
you,
went on,
parents,
so.
for letting me have a bus on route.
Adjustments to the agenda.
I do not have any.
Okay, any old business? Okay, under new business, number one, to consider establishing email addresses for school committee members. This came out of the meeting we had with Mr. Bailey, suggesting that we don't have any private emails and so on like that, in case of any kind of litigation that goes on and so on like that. It'd be a lot easier to lock down and get an address from the school or the town or wherever it might be, so. And what we need to do is actually put a motion on it to establish those school addresses, and then have the technology person we have at the school make that happen. So, what I would say is probably, I don't know what format they're gonna use it, whether they're gonna use your first name, your last name, first name dot, and then your last name, I'm not sure, but I'm sure it'll be something fairly easy to remember, fairly easy to do.
I'll make
In
that
most
motion.
cases, okay?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor?
John has a question.
Okay, John?
Are these publicly available for the public to contact a member, or are they
I
only?
believe the
internal?
school website, the school website, the school addresses are, I believe.
Well, you're proposing something new. I just want to clarify.
Just an addition. There
Okay.
are actually school personnel that have an address on the school server now.
Mhm.
We're just gonna be adding the school board members to that server.
Okay, so since the public at this point doesn't have access to the school server,
I believe there is probably addresses available, I believe, at the school.
so
Get
the
an
current
email address from
website
the teacher.
is updated, I think, 2008.
We're gonna discuss that. So, but I believe that the teacher's address at the school is available at the school. It is public knowledge, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I would expect that, John,
yeah,
that my board member email address would be available to the public.
Yeah.
I would-
just ask me, I'll give you mine.
Yeah, you can
No
have mine
problem
too.
with that, so. Okay,
And
don't stand me, okay? Okay, all in favor was, all four voted for that, so you can have that done, and, if there are any preferences on how you want your name put on there, if not, we can just let them make the decision.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, to consider establishing a stipend for school committee members, $750 for the chair position, $500 for members. This was something that was discussed sometime, I believe, last budget season. The money was put in place for the budget, and this replaces the old, I believe it's like, probably under minimum wage per meeting that it came out to, so. So that money is in the budget, and we did identify that line item for that, and so on like that. So, and, so I have a motion on that. Actually, one other thing we might wanna clarify on this, how is this gonna be paid? Do we have any preference on how this is gonna be paid? Some boards take it at the end of the year. Some boards take it, per meeting. It's broken out per meeting. I think currently, on the old system, it's broken out per meeting. I don't know how it would be easier for the bookkeeping over there to do it per meeting, or do it,
It's easier for my staff to do it one shot at the end,
okay?
but
So any thoughts on that? At the end of the school year?
I didn't even realize there was a stipend. I wish there wasn't. I think $27.50 is a lot of money that could go to the school.
Excuse me?
I didn't realize that school board members got a stipend. I didn't sign up
Okay.
for that.
Well,
And it
I'll
seems
give you an
like a-
example. Your board of selectmen get a stipend. You have other people that work for the town that get a stipend. You have people that work in the school that coach basketball and so on like that. They get a stipend. And we did get a very small stipend that had been in place for a long time. Now we're doing 2 meetings a month. So,
It was $10 per meeting, the website.
it was actually,
Or,
yeah, it was actually under minimum wage because some meetings went 2.5, 3 hours, so.
right.
It was, yeah. So, it was volunteer yeoman's work.
it varies town to town around the district. I would say it's more common to see a stipend than not, but I do have some towns where the board doesn't take a stipend. And truthfully, if any one of you individually would choose to waive that, you could. All you have to do is just write a note to my office to that effect.
I say that. You want to waive your stipend, you're more than welcome to do that.
Can I direct it?
You can.
There you go.
So, yearly?
I don't care.
Thank
Okay.
you, Melissa, I'm all for volunteering, so I just have to say thank you.
I have no problem annually, no problem. Okay. So, we have a motion on that, and that would be to consider establishing a stipend for school committee members, $750 a year for chair, $500 a year for members, paid annually.
I'll move.
Have a second on that?
I'd agree with Melissa, so I'm not gonna second the motion.
You can direct it.
Uh-huh.
So we have a motion on it, I need a second.
Well, I'll second it with the understanding that it can be waived and directed.
And the discussion I'm gonna put out there is that we do a lot of work here. 2 meetings a month is a lot of work.
I know, I know.
All in favor? 3? Opposed? Okay, so be it. Okay. Consider establishing a stipend and job description for the IT coordinator. I think this is probably gonna be a 2-parter. Maybe we'll have to table it and actually read the job descriptions that we have here and maybe put something together.
Right, my office was able to obtain some samples,
Yeah.
in some cases from, actually, around the country. There's some there from Vail, Colorado, and Cape Elizabeth, Maine,
Modesto, California.
yeah, Modesto, California. So there's quite a variety there, but, the idea is to get you thinking, and it can be as simple or as complicated as the board wants. Personally, I'm a fan of simple, but there's enough information there to get you thinking. And as I indicated earlier, it is budgeted for. There is a $3,500 item in your budget, so there's room there for thought.
So I'm looking at a few of them here quickly, and, master's degree, and, certification in Maine Department of Education, computer technology, it's like, I don't think we really need to have
I'd like
that.
to bring it back, you know, at least the next meeting, not 2 meetings out, and have time to go through all these, and I'll be happy to do a draft for people to look at.
If we wanna table it tonight, we can.
Yeah, I'd like to table it, because, I mean, we gotta look at this here and actually, I don't think it actually has to be as complicated as some of these appear. Long enough to do some appear.
I mean, what you see there is, and this is true even in Maine, larger systems have dedicated full-time people to this function. So usually it's spelled out a little bit more for them. If you share somebody or contract the services, I think you'd have to weigh, you know, how complicated you wanna make that, but that would be the explanation as to why those are a little more meaty, I guess you could say, because they're in larger places with full-time people dedicated to that.
Yeah, I think for the most part, what we're looking for, you know, I mean, what the functions over at the school would be to, you know, make sure that the laptops, I mean, not the laptops, but the Apple computers are running correctly, and make sure that if we have an issue with the phone system because we have a brownout or a blackout, that everything's reset properly, and make sure that the printed technology or the input technology we have over there is functioning properly, so like that. So I don't think it has to be as complicated as some of these look. So, I mean, it's a little pretty in-depth, so. We can table that to, and like Mr. Johnson said, the stipend is in the budget, so, we just have to assign it and put a job description to it that will work with it. So,
December 6th.
That would be plenty of time to.
yeah, I would
draft
say,
something
table
simple.
until that, if you can get preliminary drafts out
That's
before
what I'm
then,
thinking, yeah.
okay, yeah, that would be a good date. Okay, this is a big one we had from last week, to consider adoption of policy DJ, bidding/purchasing requirements. Policy DJE, procurement methods of federally funded projects, and policy DJR of federally funded procurement manual for the main school units. Administration procedure review requirement. That was that big one, about 20 pages here. This would encompass anything that had federal funding behind it. How much do you
Actually,
went into that?
we've got two.
Yeah.
One for federal funding and one for not federal.
Right, so,
So your federal funds are overwhelmingly Title I-A, Title II-A, and local entitlement. And if you're wondering how we use those funds, almost exclusively salaries. Title I-A teachers and tech, and your special ed department as well, same thing. You've got an educational technician, I believe, that's supported with LE funds. LE funds can be used in some cases to help cushion special education tuition. If you have a particularly high number of special education students at the high school level, for example. But that's how we use those funds. In your case, it's almost overwhelmingly salary and benefits for employees.
and usually that comes into the form of, or some of it comes into the form of grants.
Those are all formula-based grants. However, the policy would be in place if we applied for a separate grant from the private sector, if the root source was federal money. National Science Foundation, for example, there have been grants come and go, I'm showing my age, it's been over 15 years since I saw a grant from the NSF. But that would be federal money as well, and the same policy would be in place. But your federal sources now are what I listed, Title I-A, II-A, and local entitlement.
Okay, and on the state-based one, a lot of that has to do with larger items and so on like that we buy, and I believe the threshold limit on that is $3,000 or $4,000. $3,500, I'm sorry, thank you. So, in most cases in the state of Maine, if you have an item that you want to purchase that, you know, costs $10,000, let's say it might be piece of technology or something like that, you can actually solicit the purchasing office to the state of Maine, and actually they can do the work for you. Okay, or you can piggyback off another contract. So anything above $3,500 would have to be adhered to the state of Maine purchasing regulations and so on like that. And like I said, like if you want to purchase technology, or you want to purchase cell phones, or even a bus, okay, that wasn't like a normal school bus, you could go to the state purchasing office, and they could solicit bids for you and so on like that. So that's what these two policies require, and that's the adherence that they have to, the guidelines they have, so. So have you read them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So do I have a motion on that to adopt these two policies?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I had a question about, foregoing competitive bid or RFP processes when it's under 3,500. And this is a question about practice, not really.
Yep.
You know, basically it says you could approve it, you just have to tell us you're going to do it. Is that right?
That's in essence
And
what that means. Yep.
is that the practice here in Maine?
Not necessarily here in Lubec. Believe it or not, I've worked in the system that's smaller than Lubec. When I was principal at Wesley Elementary, I'll use this as an example. Wesley's still open. They have 7 kids there, and it's great. It's like Little House on the Prairie. You have 2 classrooms. It's what they call the big kids' room and the little kids' room, and there are days I miss Wesley. But I'll use this as an example. Sanding. They needed to sand the parking lot. There was one person in town who had a truck, and that was the only person to go to. We did not put that out to bid, plowing and sanding the way that we do here, because they had one provider. And that was me picking up the phone and saying, Glenn, we need some sand. But here in Lubec, you've got more options and services of that nature, as you've seen already. We put them out to bid, and I think that's a better use of the public money. I think it demonstrates a willingness of the board to be good stewards of the public money, and I believe in that. It would really have to be exceptional not to put it out to bid.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. And professional development follow-up. I believe you're going to provide some answers for that?
I did not get any more information, sir.
Okay.
Table 11.
And how long before you might have information on that?
Well, let's table it till next time. It's been
when?
a hectic couple of weeks.
15?
Sure.
Okay. Put that back on the agenda for the 15th, so. Well, too bad Ms. Wilmer isn't here because we've done Unreal Mallory. Question?
Just a comment, because I was kind of dozing off when you had public participation. Just want to publicly thank the people that supported the Lubec Education Association sponsored Halloween dance to raise money for Christmas Craft Day, and the community support we got, and especially want to thank Joanne and Dallas, because of their donation, the kids ate free that night.
Yes,
And so I just want to publicly thank the community, and even though I was there because of dental work, I want to say, I personally, and I know that LEA, the whole teacher appreciates the support we were given for that event.
What
And
was
it's
the name
nice.
of that organization again?
The Lubec Education Association sponsored it, but the community made it happen. The community made it possible, Mr. John. I want to make sure we say that
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the community, we would not have what we have. It was fun. I missed it.
Had the Halloween event?
Halloween dance. And that's going to fund, all the money raised is going to fund the Christmas craft day.
Okay, we'll call it adjourned at 6:55. Okay. You want to get that cookie dough?
I got mine.
I'll try to get.
I got mine in the freezer. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get it because I left it sitting in my room.
Uh-oh.
In fact, after you look at it, oh, it's supposed to be frozen. I gotta go get it.
Okay.
I didn't sign in, Mr. Johnson. No, I didn't either.
Nice shoes.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You didn't sign